The most controversial college football team in the nation, the most hated team in the nation, the most hyped team in the nation, coming in at 11th on the Big 12 preseason media poll, but coming in top 15 offense and top 15 defense. The new college football game put them as a number one quarterback in Shedeur Sanders, the number one receiver in Travis Hunter. I don't care whether you believe that or whether you're not, or what your thoughts are on Colorado. My goal in today's video is to show you guys the truth about Colorado and their roster as a whole. We're going to mention Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders right now. Shedeur, one of the best quarterbacks in the country, if not the best. Travis Hunter, one of the most important players in the country as a top corner and a top receiver. I'm not going to argue whether or not he's 1, 2, or 3, whatever. I'm not here to argue that. He is an impactful player. Shedeur is an impactful player. Coach Prime is an impactful coach, whether you like him, whether you hate him, whether you love him. I don't care what you think. Those guys are impactful players, but in today's video, we're not going to mention those guys again the whole rest of the video. Today is looking at the rest of Colorado's roster and showing why they have a good team and why they're ranked. I don't agree necessarily with the top 15 defense and stuff that they're ranked in the college football game, but I'm going to show you the rest of their roster and talk about the strengths of their roster, not named Shedeur, Travis, and Deion, because that's all people talk about. People hear Colorado and it's, oh, Shedeur, Travis. No one actually knows, unless you're like a Colorado fan. These people are hating on Colorado, saying they're trash and stuff without even looking at the roster. So hold your opinion for a minute on how good this team is. Let me talk to you about some of the other guys they have on this roster and then form your opinion at the end. And if it's still the same, it is what it is, but at least hear me out first on the rest of their roster. Quick disclaimer before we kind of go into I'm not going to mention everyone new on their team, because the whole point of this, they have so many new players from that team last year that didn't live up to expectations. A lot of new players, a lot of good players. I'm not going to mention everyone, but I want to highlight some of the best upgrades I think they made and some of the best players coming in that are going to make a huge impact on this season. So first off, we'll start with their coaching. Bring Pat Shurmur as the OC. He was working on the staff last year. Shedeur loves Pat Shurmur. They have a close relationship. Former NFL experience, a great guy to have at OC. And then a guy I really like coming in at defensive corner, they got Robert Livingston, who was the former safeties coach for the Cincinnati Bengals. He coached Jesse Bates and helped bring him up in Cincinnati. So he's a great coach. Warren Sapp comes in the D-line too I think he's still technically like a grad assistant, but he's doing their D-line there. Warren Sapp, Hall of Fame kind of player. So that's their coaching staff. They got some great coaches at Colorado. There's no denying that. Moving on to the actual roster, starting some impact players. Jimmy Horn is returning. He had a really good year last year. I think he's just going to be even better. Great chemistry with Shedeur, and I think he has a chance to be their number one receiver. Maybe, I think it's going to be more of a mix of receivers. It depends, like Travis Hunter technically is the number one when he's out there, but hopefully they can maybe spare him some more snaps this year and save him for some of the bigger games, because just playing both sides is going to be tough. I said I wasn't going to mention Travis Hunter and Shedeur. I'm sorry. It was more pointing on Jimmy Horn as the next big receiver, but Jimmy Horn I think is really good. He's not like you're going to be your elite, top 20 draft pick kind of guy, but I think he could be a guy that you talk about in the NFL as like a mid-round guy, because he has a lot of talent and a lot of speed. Coming in, they brought 2 transfers in that I think are going to have huge impacts in this Colorado receiving corps. We have Will Shepard and LeJontay Wester as 2 guys who are coming on. And then Omarion Miller is a true sophomore now. He played a little as a true freshman. If you want to see the talent of Omarion Miller, go watch that USC game. It was his first time kind of playing his show to kind of get into the rotation early on last year. But once he got in, he balled. So there's a couple of guys. Looking more into those guys, Will Shepard is coming over from Vanderbilt. He's a graduate transfer. He was actually invited to the Shrine Bowl last year, ended up transferring and staying in college. But he was 7th all-time at Vanderbilt in receiving yards with 2,067 career receiving yards in the SEC. So he had a lot of production as an SEC receiver, which is saying something, because SEC has the best defense in the nation, as we know. So Will Shepard, a guy coming over, older guy with great production in one of the best conference in college football. Next up, we got LeJontay Wester coming over from Florida Atlantic. He was first team all AAC at FAU. He had 108 receptions for almost 1,200 yards and 8 touchdowns last year. He was also the AAC Special Teams Player of the Year as a returner. So Wester's an electric dude who's going to bring in speed and just dynamism. He's probably going to be the returner. He had incredible stats. He, like I said, you saw almost 1,200 yards on 108 receptions last year. The production's there. He's going to step in as a guy, maybe a slot receiver who's just electric and make some big plays for Colorado. Coming in at running back, they lost a lot of their running backs, and it looked tough. Dylan Edwards was a tough loss. Hate to see him go. Alton McCaskill also. But the reason some of those guys left was because they brought in a guy named Dallin Hayden, running back from Ohio State. He was a former four-star, committed to Ohio State, was there for 2 or 3 years. I think it was 2 years. But he was just buried behind. He came in. Travion Henderson was above him the whole time. He got just buried behind him and Mayan Williams. They just always had such good time. He's kind of buried. He ended up playing a couple games. I believe it was Purdue his true freshman year. He started in other games, and he was incredible in the games he played. He had a couple breakout performances. When he did play, he just never really broke the rotation because of how much talent they had. But I expect a lot of big things from Dallin Hayden. He's an incredibly talented, like I said, four-star dude coming out of high school. So I think he's going to be a stud at running back for Colorado and a guy they need. We haven't gotten to see him yet because in their spring game, he hadn't come over to the team yet. He was a late guy, same with Will Shepard. So we haven't seen those guys in this offense yet. LeJonte West had a couple big plays in their spring game already kind of meshing. But like guys, we haven't necessarily seen yet. Moving on to the O-line, a couple big guys they brought in. Jordan Seaton's the one guy you got to mention. He was the number one tackle in the class of 2024. Kind of started as like a guy like, hey, this guy can play right away. He's not like a developmental tackle. He was a guy, he's got the size. He can play right away. He already was there up in the spring for Colorado. I expect him to start day one. I expect him to be good day one. He's obviously going to have some growing pains coming from high school to college, but he played at IMG, so, he played the best of the best competition in high school. Like I said, touted as a dude who's ready to play week one. He's not a guy that's going to need a lot of development. So, guy, I'm really looking forward to that. I think it's going to help this O-line. They got a couple, I'm not going to go too in-depth. They got a couple other really good interior transfers. They're obviously, we're not talking best of the best, but we're talking some of the best interior transfer guys that were in the transfer portal decided to come to CU. So they beefed up. This O-line is completely different from last year. You look at the guys last year that really struggled, and Shedeur was fighting for his life behind that O-line. There's a completely different offensive line now. Lots of new guys. Got some older graduate transfers in that have played top football in the Big 12, in the ACC. Some guys from different conferences that have played legit football at the highest level. They're coming in to help this team. That's the big change, that the offense is going to be a top. I don't know if they're going to be like a top 10 offense, but I think they're going to be one of the better offenses in all of college football. They have guys that we're not going to mention, number one quarterback, their number one receiver. They got lots of depth at receiver this year, which is something they didn't really have last year. They had some good top-end receivers, but the depth this year is great. They have the number one running back in Dallin Hayden, who I think is going to be a baller, and a hugely upgraded O-line from last year. Moving on to the defense, though, some guys I love on this defense. My favorite out of everyone they added this defense was B.J. Green from Arizona State. He's an edge. He was one of my favorite players. I'm so glad they got him. He was the 7th-ranked D lineman in the transfer portal. He was a 4-star transfer kind of guy. He was like a fringe all-conference guy with Arizona State. He didn't make all-conference, but he was a guy that definitely could have. He was Big 12 preseason all-conference this year. He's one of the guys going at the media day. Big name, B.J. Green. Expect big things from him because he's coming over. Ball to Arizona State. He was there for 2 years, coming out his third year now at CU, change of scenery, and I think he's going to be the best. He might, like, other than Travis Hunter, I think he's going to be the best player on this defense because he knows how to get after quarterbacks, and he's got the size and everything. He's a guy that could potentially be looking into as an NFL guy down the road. We'll see if it's this year or maybe next year as he keeps growing into his frame. But a guy I'm really excited for, B.J. Green, coming over from Arizona State, elite defensive lineman. And then across from him, they got a pair of Pitt edges that they transferred in. First one is Deion Hayes. He had 10.5 TFLs last year for Pitt. A player that a lot of people would agree that he was a lot better than his stats. He didn't have crazy stats at Pitt, but a lot of people say he was really good. And a lot of Pitt guys were sad to see him go. Supposedly he was offered crazy NIL deals to stay at Pitt, but he wanted to win and he couldn't see himself winning at Pitt. So that's why he transferred to Colorado, where he can see them winning, whether or not the media does or not. He can see them winning at CU, and that's why he transferred there. And then actually his former teammate at Pitt, Samuel Okunlola. I'm sorry, I definitely butchered that name, but he's also transferring over. He was a former 3-star class of 2022, so he's still a young guy coming over from Pitt. He was the number 32 player in the entire transfer portal. He's the 4th-ranked defensive lineman in the portal. So another younger guy. There's a lot of the guys that transfer, we're talking Will Shepard, LeJonte Wester. They're older guys. I guess Dallin Hayden and B.J. Green are younger guys, but he's a younger guy, which is good to see. Like I said, class of 2022, so he's coming into his 3rd year. and a guy like I said, top of the portal, good guy you like to see. And so now we got 3 edge guys who I think can contribute, which is a lot more than you can really say last year. We got a lot better talent. And then on the interior, they brought in, I'm gonna butcher this name, I apologize in advance, Chidozie Wankwo. Chidozie Wankwo, I think he's an interior D lineman from Houston. He was ranked the 23rd overall defensive lineman in the portal, not just interior D lineman, just overall D lineman, 23rd overall in the portal from Houston. They need some help stopping the run, and he's going to be a huge part in that run stopping, be able to put him in the middle. Big guy, going to be really important to this defense if they're going to stop the run, especially in the Big 12. Big 12 is all about offense, so you got to be able to stop. So these defensive linemen are going to be huge, and like I said, huge thing about the Big 12 is having depth at the D line. That's something that last year they had a couple big contributors on the D line, but they didn't really have any depth. So they bring in multiple. You want to almost have 2 groups of D linemen because in the Big 12 is all about no huddle, fast pace, flying around offense. So you're gonna be having to rotate these D linemen in and out because they're gonna be getting tired. So it's important to have depth, and that's what CU did, brought in a lot of depth at that D line, and then the safety is kind of staying the same from last year. They didn't bring anyone, but at corner, they had a couple of moves at corner. Corner is one of those positions where it's a lot open right now. Obviously, Travis Hunter is going to be your number 1, but there's number 2, number 3 corner is going to be, a lot more debate on who's going to be playing, who's not. One of the guys who was there in the spring who looked pretty good was DJ McKinney. He was a transfer from Oklahoma State. He was a former 3-star, started 14 games for Oklahoma State last year. Another guy who he's got the size and build for a good corner build, comes over. I think he's my bet right now to be the starting outside corner opposite of Travis Hunter. Like I said, he looked good in the spring when he came over and was practicing. And then the other guy I'm really interested in at corner is Colton Hood. He transferred over from Auburn. He's a class of 2023, so he was only 1 year in college. His last year, they marked him as a starting rotation corner, so he didn't start, but he played as a true freshman at Auburn last year and looked good in some of the time he played. So like I said, he's a guy that's really important to bring in because he's a young guy. He's not one of these grad transfers, so he might not start right away, but a guy they can develop. And if anyone's going to get the best out of cornerbacks, then it's going to be Deion Sanders. If he knows anything, no matter whether you love Deion, you hate him, the one thing we can all agree on is he knows cornerback, one of the best of all time to ever do it. He's going to be able to help these guys in corner, and he'll be able to get more out of these corners than maybe they could elsewhere. So that's one thing where the cornerback room is a little bit weaker as it stands compared to some of the other positions that they bolstered up. But if anyone's going to get anything out of these guys, it's going to be Deion Sanders. And I like DJ McKinney and Colton Hood coming over as some good depth guys to pair with the guys. So they have a couple guys coming back from last year who were solid. So it's good to see that. And then that's mainly their main moves. Like I said, they got a lot of talent, a lot of guys. So it's not just the guys I mentioned at the top that I said I wouldn't mention again. They have a lot of depth on this roster that they didn't have last year, and some dudes who I think are going to play huge roles, especially on that D-line room. I think that was the biggest upgrades they had. Now take a quick look at the Big 12 as a conference and some of their competition. I mentioned earlier they were ranked 11th. I'll have here, I guess it'll be on this side, the preseason poll rankings for the Big 12. You can see Colorado is at 11th. I think they're going to finish a lot higher than 11th. They also have an easier schedule. Looking at their schedule, I think they can definitely win a lot of these games. I mean, the Big 12, I think, as much as the Big 12 doesn't have the top 5 teams, they don't have the Bamas, the Georgias, the Ohio States, the Michigans. They don't have that elite team, but I think the Big 12 might be the most competitive conference this year because they have so many teams that I could see winning. I think Utah, I agree, at the top of the top. They've always just been good in the Pac-12. Cam Rising's coming back for his 25th season as their starting quarterback. And then just great talent at all these other schools from Kansas State, Oklahoma State, Kansas. Arizona's got some dudes in the draft that are going to be they got a couple first-round guys over there, along with Noah Fafita, an elite quarterback who I think is going to be just fun to watch. So this is a really tough conference. We already see the trash talk coming out. KJ Jefferson from UCF. Talking trash with Colorado. So it's going to be a fun season. I think the Big 12 is going to be uber competitive, and I think Colorado's right in there in that conversation. But anyways, I've shown you all the new guys. Let me know what you guys think about in the comments about Colorado. Any other guys I forgot to mention that you think are going to have huge roles for Colorado, and just anything else you want to mention. Thank you for watching. Make sure you subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you for the next one.